In today's video, we have some NHL trade rumors to discuss, focusing on the Edmonton Oilers and how they may address their blue line concerns considering the significant injury suffered by defenseman Andrej Sekera in offseason training. Plus, we have some Ottawa Senators news to discuss, including a very interesting rumor on a potential ownership change and a quick update on Erik Karlsson. Plus, I want to discuss the Anaheim Ducks signing forward Ondrej Kase. All that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we have a lot of things to cover here today, so let's jump right into it. First thing I want to talk about quickly here is the Anaheim Ducks signing forward Ondrej Kase to a 3-year deal worth $2.6 million. Now, Kase actually had a really solid year last year. This is kind of in the range I kind of expected him to be. I thought they might get him a little bit lower, maybe under 2.5. But overall, I think this is a pretty valuable contract for the team. A decent deal for the player as well. The end of the 3 years, he's still a restricted free agent, so still a controllable asset. And at that point in time, they can discuss a longer-term deal. But last year, he played in 69 games, put up 20 goals and 38 points. Was really impressive in the second half of the year. So personally, I think by the end of this contract, if he keeps improving the way he's expected to, he should hopefully become a pretty consistent 25 to 30 goal scorer and be a very important player for the Ducks moving forward. Kase was originally a 2014 draft pick in the 7th round, number 205th overall, so I dare say that worked out to be a draft steal. You don't see too many 7th round picks make it to the NHL, let alone become regulars and perform at this kind of level. So a good deal for Kase and the Ducks. I fully suspect his role to continue rising here with that team moving forward. Now we'll jump into the Ottawa situation here momentarily. First, I want to touch on the Edmonton Oilers and some trade rumors and trade speculation. It's kind of come up since the injury was announced about Andrej Sekera having a torn ACL. So he's going to be out likely for 6 months, maybe a little bit more. So really, it's quite possible he could be out until January or February this coming year. And the Oilers' blue line was already an area of concern, not a strength for them. Obviously, this is his second significant injury here in recent times. Obviously, he had a bad knee injury that he just recuperated from last year. So this is not good news for the Oilers at all. An area of weakness just became weaker. So obviously, once that came to be, there's been lots of speculation. Or what are the Oilers going to do? There certainly are some interesting defensemen that have been rumored to be on the trade market, and the Oilers have been rumored to be showing interest in the past. So could those interests kind of resume and pick back up now that this injury has taken place? Now, the main one that comes to mind here is the Boston Bruins' Torrey Krug. Now, at one point in time, Torrey Krug was a name that was heavily in the rumor mill, and it looked as though the Bruins were quite interested in trading him, possibly trying to obtain a forward in return. Obviously, the Bruins do have a pretty good defense core on that left side, and they felt like moving Krug might be the good move, even though he provides a lot of offense. They don't seem to be completely enamored with his two-way game, which is, I do understand. But at the same time, Krug's pretty effective on the offensive side and a good puck-moving defenseman, and that's also pretty important. So either way, if they were to make a move with a guy like Torrey Krug, it looks like they wanted somebody who could ideally be a top 6 forward in return. So the speculation that I've seen here is maybe the Bruins and Oilers could hook up for a deal involving Torrey Krug and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Now, if you're a Bruins fan or an Oilers fan, I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts on that type of scenario. Personally, I think both teams should be very cautious with this move. It could work out to be mutually beneficial, but then again, it might not be as well. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers have used Ryan Nugent-Hopkins towards the end of last year as a left winger for Connor McDavid instead of being a center iceman. Obviously, they have a lot of depth at center between McDavid and Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And obviously, with what the contract is for Nugent-Hopkins, it just seemed to be kind of a heavy price tag for a third-line center. And they were struggling to find solid wingers for McDavid. So they tried out Nugent-Hopkins there, and it actually didn't look too bad. Nugent-Hopkins and McDavid also had an opportunity to play together in the same line at the World Championships, and it continued to have pretty solid play. So I fully would suspect here, assuming that a trade doesn't happen, that Nugent-Hopkins will be on the left side of McDavid when training camp opens here for the Oilers. I think it's quite possible they could consider putting a player like Kailer Yamamoto on the other side to kind of round out that top line. He certainly has the speed and creativity to keep up with those guys. As much as they'd want to shore up that blue line and get some more puck-moving offensive guys on the back end there, at the same time, they could use some defensive guys, and they'd be creating another hole in their top 6. So really, as much as it could be beneficial, they could create another problem by making a move like that. From the Bruins perspective, I mean, I do understand the possibility of trading Torrey Krug, and I can see the possibility of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins fitting in with the Bruins in multiple capacities. He could possibly be a left winger within their top 6 group, or they could play him at center ice as well. At the same time, though, I mean, they do have a lot of depth at center. They've got Bergeron and Krejci. They've got other guys that can play center further down their lineup. So I'm not really sure that Nugent-Hopkins would make sense as a center with the Bruins. To be more likely to play in a winger capacity like he's doing right now with the Oilers. And if I were the Bruins personally, they have some good young wingers like a Ryan Donato and a Jake DeBrusk. I would be giving more opportunity to them. So personally, I think this is a deal that does sound interesting in some ways. I'd be curious to see if it could mutually benefit both clubs. But if I were either of these teams, I'd be cautious to make a move of this nature. So again, if you're a Bruins or Oilers fan, I'd love to hear your comments down below. This is a trade that's been proposed here by some articles I've come across, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and if you think this is something they should pursue. Now, the other defenseman that's been brought up that the Oilers should consider going after would be Carolina Hurricanes defenseman Justin Falk. Obviously, he's another guy that's been in the trade rumor mill for a long time now and is yet to be moved because of his contract and having 2 years left. The Hurricanes seem to be a little bit more patient moving him than they did Jeff Skinner. Apparently, they had no desire to re-sign Jeff Skinner. Maybe they knew he wasn't going to re-sign with them. Not sure how that relationship kind of broke down or why the move was decided 100% that he wasn't coming back. But either way, they can be more patient with Falk. But they do have a lot of defensemen in Carolina, and it does make sense that by the time the season opens that somebody does get moved off the roster so that they don't end up having to send somebody to the minors and possibly risk losing them. Now, they do have a couple younger defensemen that would be waiver exempt, so they could potentially block somebody out too by having more veterans in the line. Either way, they've got a lot of guys there, and it does make sense they'd make a move, but obviously they're being patient with this one. I'm not sure Justin Falk would be the best scenario for the Oilers. I mean, he would certainly help on the offensive side of things. He could be good on a power play, decent puck mover. Defensively, he's okay, but certainly I'm just not sure he's the absolute best fit there. So again, if you're an Oilers fan or a Hurricanes fan, what would your thoughts be on that? I would think the Hurricanes, more than likely, if they're going to trade Falk, they're going to want picks and prospects in return. I don't think they're too concerned about having a roster player. They're certainly not going to want a defenseman in return. Maybe a younger forward or picks and prospects would make the most sense. It seems like the Hurricanes to me are in kind of salary slashing mode. They want to spend less on salaries is what it looks like to me. Looks like new ownership there is kind of wanting to cut things back. So I think they're going to want more futures in return. And I'm just not sure the Oilers really have a ton of that that they'd be willing to give up to make that happen. Really, they do have a couple of interesting young prospects, but they're really guys that they should hang on to, in my opinion. So I'm not sure that deal kind of makes sense, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section to see what you think of that proposed trade. Now, next up, I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators and the Erik Karlsson situation, as well as some rumors about ownership. Now, obviously, the Erik Karlsson saga has been dragging on here for many weeks and months. The Erik Karlsson situation really took fold here last year at the trade deadline. Didn't happen. They did not move him. As soon as the season came to an end, things ramped up again. Obviously he was the talk of the town at the draft. The Senators swore they weren't going to trade him. They didn't do it. Free agency hits. There was rumors galore. There was a few days where it looked like it was imminent based on reports by various NHL hockey reporters and insiders. Nothing has happened as of right now. So basically the only reports have come across on Karlsson directly. There was a report from Brent Wallace and TSN here in Canada indicating that at this point in time, contract negotiations have been eerily quiet between Karlsson and the Senators. It was reported and seems to be accurate that they did table a pretty fair contract to Karlsson, 8 years at $11 million per year. The main sticking point seemed to be, though, was how it was structured. The main issue appearing on the Karlsson side of things was that enough of it wasn't paid out in bonuses versus salary. Obviously, some players are really big on the salary versus bonus payout for lockout protection and whatnot, as well as potential trade or no trade clauses in the contract. So there was those other types of details that seemed to be more of the sticking point than the actual money offered. At least that's what we're led to believe at this point in time. But there hasn't really been any new negotiations going on. Things have been very quiet on that front. Then there was a new article come out yesterday indicating that at this point in time, the Senators are very patient right now. There isn't a lot of pressure from ownership to Pierre Dorion to get this done. Obviously, I think the long-term hope here would be to retain him, but at the same time, they have to be able to make things, improve things enough to make him want to stay, which is certainly in question at the very least here at this point in time. So I guess this new article indicates that Karlsson likely goes into training camp, starts the season in Ottawa. We'll see how things go. I do think they they will make another attempt at offering an amended contract extension to see what they can do. Now, the other big part of the Senators news here that I came across was mainly through Reddit and Twitter with a lot of inside sources. Now, these sources I'm going to reference here today on this ownership stuff are people that are local business people within the Ottawa community who deal with the Senators on a business level. So there's been lots of chatter about ownership. This has been going on for weeks and months. I've heard numerous times, really, I could say honestly, probably for about the last 6 months, with a lot of the people I keep in touch with in the Ottawa area, indicating that an ownership change is looming and there is something coming. The Eugene Melnyk seems to be getting himself in a position to possibly sell the team, even though he's denied that numerous times publicly. So these new reports here are people, like I said, that deal with the Senators on a business level with different, either their own businesses or businesses where they work. And there's a lot of, obviously, contracts with the Senators on different levels, providing different services and products and whatnot. And a lot of things have been put on hold, and a lot of the accounts that these companies have with the Senators, that the Senators have requested them to put them on hold, and they kind of led them to believe that there's some big changes coming and that they didn't want anything canceled. They just had to put a lot of things on hold here for the time being. So they're kind of leading people to think that a major change is coming. So obviously the talk of the town is that it could be in an ownership capacity. I mean, it was certainly made public not too long ago, earlier this offseason, that the Senators had refinanced a bunch of team debt. I'm not really sure why that was made public, because I don't think it was really required to be. But at the same time, it was still another interesting tidbit. Obviously, when they did comment on the situation, they indicated that it was kind of to help them kind of be better positioned for contracts, and obviously getting the new arena deal in place, whatnot. So obviously there's a lot of interesting things in Ottawa. They have a lot of guys on short-term contracts, which also kind of raises more red flags. A lot of the players on short-term contracts, like the Mark Stone signing this year, the Cody Cece signing this year. They've got obviously Karlsson on his final year. They got Matt Duchene on his final year. They got Ryan DeZingle. There's just a lot of contracts that are not committed to beyond this year or next. So that's kind of would put new ownership in a great situation to kind of work with a clean slate, decide who's going to stay, who's going to go, and it would make things more attractive, I think, for a new ownership group to come in. There have been reports that there's multiple groups in the Ottawa area that would be interested in buying them. There is certainly a link of the Senators to the Cirque du Soleil ownership group as well. So could we see ownership change coming for the Ottawa Senators sometime during the next season? And could they possibly get things turned around, and maybe some of these players who are rumored to be on the way out possibly stay, get behind a new owner, and see things get better in Ottawa? Certainly leave your comments down below. Like I said, these sources are local business people in Ottawa who deal with them on a business level. So I certainly do think there is some credibility to their reports here. Now, if you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.